we are converting a Performer JC26X trike over to a mid-drive power unit with 250 watts of power. You can convert the unit over utilizing the original Allen wrench that you got with the kit and a few other tools as well. So we're going to mount this first. This is the battery holder and also the controller. So we're going to put this underneath the seat right here, and we'll mount that, and then we'll move on to the next step. This is the battery platform where the 36-volt battery is going to lock in and power up the motor drive on the midsection or the front section of this trike. And this also has the controller that is basically the brains of the operation to some degree, but also the motor itself has a computer in it to regulate the different speeds and things like that. So now the battery bracket is mounted, and this is the battery cable that's going to go to the motor. Just make sure you snip the tie wrap that is there, and make sure you keep the keys, which are a part of this battery housing, and the key actually will lock the battery so no one can steal it from you. And the key actually goes right into the side here. Once you snap the battery in, you have to use the key to unlock it and pull the battery out to charge it. Now we're going to route the cable and then go to the front to actually mount the motor. The next thing we're going to do is mount the display. So the display, if you have one of these hand grips, you can put it right on there, and it just slides on. And you can adjust the grip as well, in or out, so that you can see the display better. In order to get this front area off, the gear set off, you've got to take out, of course, your derailleur in the front. So we're going to loosen this, take the cable out, and then we're going to actually take the control arm for the derailleur, and we're going to pop that out and use that stalk for the controller. After we pull the cable out, we're going to loosen up this front derailleur, and we're going to actually pull that out of the mount that it's in, and we're going to use that mount for the controller for the Motinova switches. So we're going to slide this in, and that'll be the controller, plus it's going to be the hand grip for the trike. Next, we're going to replace the boom with the new motor on the boom and eliminate this gear set up front and this whole assembly, which was the old boom. So what I'm doing is I'm actually measuring the boom that's here originally so that we can try to get it very close for the person that's using this bike. So I'm coming up with about 7 1/4 inches right to this position here. And so what we're going to do is set the other one up about that same length, and of course we also have to take the pedals off of the gear set. So we'll do all that, and we'll slide the new motor in, and of course the chain and this assembly, we're going to have to get the chain off this assembly. So now we're looking at the front derailleur. You may notice that the front derailleur does not have any way to break it apart. Some of the derailleurs will have a screw here that will hold the unit together. This one is actually has a rivet here. So unfortunately, you're going to have to break the chain in order to get this boom and the front gear set off of your Performer bike. So you need to get a master link, and that master link will be put in place once you get it off. The other thing I will mention is the fact that the drive on the motor, the last gear on here, is definitely bigger than the drive on the motor. So some links are going to have to be taken out of the chain in order to make it shift properly. So that's the next thing we're going to do. We're going to break this chain, take some links out. The other thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you're on the biggest gear in the back. The biggest gear, because you want that chain to be as tight as possible when you get it back together again. And then as it goes to the lower gears, it will have plenty enough slack so that it will shift down. I usually put a piece of wire here so that the chain does not fall back into the tube, and it makes it a lot easier once you break it so that you don't lose it and have to run it back through the tube. So I just tie a knot in a cable, and that'll hold it there in place. You're going to take the chain breaker that came with your original Performer kit, and you're going to actually break the chain, and I'm breaking it up here so that I can then reset it and match it to the motor's gear. Now that we have the pedals removed, what we're going to do is we're going to loosen this yoke so that we can get this old boom out and put the new boom in. And the new boom, of course, has the motor on it. Now with the chain split apart, you can easily take it off the front sprocket, guide it through the front derailleur, and now you'll be able to pull the old boom out of the bike. Now it's time to take your Motinova motor and the pedals and put that into the boom holder, and we're going to slide that in. Just be sure that you have the gear drive on the right hand side to match up with your chain, and we're just going to slide it in. Now we did take that measurement earlier, and so it was 7.5 inches to the pedal. So we're going to measure it again, and this is 9, so it's got to go in farther. And as I said, you may have to cut down your boom in order to make it fit properly with this big motor on there. So we're going to just slide it in and keep adjusting it, and we're pretty much there. And then we're going to tighten up this collar again. Make sure you evenly tighten the collar for the boom. And once that is done and you've got the correct length here, you might want to have your person go ahead and sit in the chair and test it out to make sure the length is correct for their legs. First, you want to put in your pedals, and these, we call these Franken pedals, so they're a little different than normal pedals. But screw the pedals in, and then have the person that owns the bike sit in the bike and make sure that the length is correct before you go any further. Now you can see that the chain with the new master link is back together and set up correctly for the front end and the new motor. We're getting closer to the finish line. We've got everything installed that we need to install. We had charged the battery up previously, so we've got a good charge on the battery, but we have to run the cables. And so we're now going to run the cables. Make sure you run the cables so they don't interfere with your steering, any of the steering mechanism. And you want to then tie wrap them to the body of the Performer trike. So as you can see, we wrapped the wires around the body of the Performer trike and then secured them with tie wraps and made sure everything got to its destination, and then plugged in the different connectors. And it's very easy to see which connector goes where because they're all different. So as you can see, I led the speed sensor wire up to, in my case, the right hand wheel, and I actually put it through the little slot that's here to kind of secure it, and wrapped it around the body, the frame, of course, of the bike. And so what we're going to do now is I'm going to take this unit and I'm going to put it up against those washers, just like this, and then I'm going to secure it with tie wraps. After I secure it with tie wraps, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the magnet and I'm going to fix the magnet to a spoke right here so that it hits the middle of this sensor. There's a little mark on the middle of the sensor, and that's where you're supposed to aim the magnet, to the middle of this sensor. And then you should have a speed sensor working on your controller. You're now looking at the finished speed sensor tie wrapped to the other component with all the washers on it. And this is done on the brake, on the disc brake area, and you use the longer screws that came in the package for the disc brakes and remove the original screws that were in there, and then it will mount correctly. That is the finished product. And now you can see the orientation of the magnet and the sensor, and you'll see that little circle on the sensor. The magnet should be directly across from it when it spins by it. The last thing we have to talk about is the power supply and the connection to the motor. Now at first, you may look around and say there is no connection on the motor, but that's not true, because there is a 4-prong connection that's coming from the battery source. And if you take out on the right side the 3 screws that are holding the plate on the right side of the motor, you will see that there are actually several connections on this side, and one of them is for the battery. So if you spin this cover, spin it over, once you get the 3 screws out, you'll see at the very base there is a connector that will actually fit this particular end. So you just have to go through the same opening that the other wires are in, come through and connect it to the power source. And then, of course, on the way here, you need to wrap it around the body and tie wrap it as needed. So the final thing to do, once you get all the wiring done and the power cord connected to the motor, is to actually put in the battery. That's very simple. You just get it on the track here and let it slide down and slam into place, and then it locks. To power it up, you just push the button on the side and it will power up. The final piece of this puzzle is to wrap the handle where you took your front derailleur off. As you can see, it's all wrapped, and the wire that's going to the control mechanism is covered and comfortable for your hand. And that completes the assembly of the Motinova 250 watt drive for the Performer recumbent bike. And now it's time to hop on and have some fun.